he says, don't let your role define your responsibility. So yes, your role may be software engineer, data analyst, data scientist, but is your responsibility only querying data, only building data models, only building out code? No, your responsibility as an owner is to find new opportunities, grow yourself, because that's one of the biggest ways you can add impacts to the company, and then find new opportunities.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Data Scientist Show. Today, we have Tommy Dang. Tommy is the co-founder and CEO of Mage, a data ingestion and transformation pipelines for data engineers. Previously, he was working on data engineering and machine learning engineering at Airbnb. He has a bachelor degree of science from UC Berkeley, studying economic, history, and sociology. Today, we'll talk about how he learned engineering and machine learning after college, data and ML tools he built at Airbnb, performance review, and how he navigated his career and grew from engineer to founder and CEO. If you like the show, subscribe to the channel, give me a 5-star review, send me a LinkedIn message if you have any feedback or if you want to sponsor the podcast. Welcome to the show, Tommy.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm also very excited to have this conversation. We met a few weeks ago at the Ray Summit, so it's great to have you back. I know you didn't study engineering in college, so how did you get into data science and machine learning?
Yes, good question. So in college, I made up my own major in Berkeley, but I was always into computers, building out Legos, playing games, all that things. I love the math behind it. I love the logic behind it. And it was shortly after school that I started working on building out a website, building out an app. And then I met my then co-founder in San Diego, and we started a company. And that's when I really started to build production apps. I was a software engineer initially at that company. And then later on when I joined Airbnb, that's when I started exploring new areas. The teams were really early, the teams were really small. So there was a lot of opportunity to fill other responsibilities. And so I just really killed it at what I did. I built apps really fast. I shipped all my epics really fast. And I gave enough time for me to start dabbling in SQL, querying data. And then over time, I became really proficient at that.
Yeah.
And then I started seeing, the data tools there were a little bit immature. We were growing, we were early. So then I started realizing, hey, we could build some tools that make my efforts easier or other people's efforts easier. So that's how I started getting to data engineering. And eventually that evolved to machine learning as well, because natural evolution of data engineering starts blending into machine learning and now what we call machine learning ops.
Yeah, that's a very interesting journey. So you didn't know how to write code. How did you start your first project? How did you learn how to write your first line of code?
Yes. Well, this was back before all the boot camps were around, all the tutorials. The first thing I learned was Ruby on Rails. Ruby on Rails is amazing. I still love that. And fun fact, Airbnb was all Ruby on Rails for a very long time. And then eventually people came in and we had to do Java. But okay, so back then, Ruby on Rails, okay? First line of code, there's this one tutorial I read 3 times. It's like a book. It was so good. It shows you everything, how to write line by line, and then the logic behind it and the concepts behind it. But I think the number one principle that I always tell everyone, if you want to learn something, learn by doing.
Yeah.
Learn by doing a real example, not just some toy example like Twitter clone, right? Like think about something you're excited about. Let's say you're excited about movies. Build something that has something to do with movies.
Right. Yeah, I love it. So that's how you got into engineering. And can you tell us more about the projects you worked on at Airbnb? And I heard you worked with Brian Chesky. What was that experience? I'm also curious.
Yes. Okay, so when I first joined Airbnb in early 2015, I joined a small team called Business Travel. I wanted to join a team that was like a startup. And then shortly afterwards, I was fortunate to be recruited into this nascent, very small team that Brian was putting together.
Yeah.
And that team was called Magical Trips early on. It's like a code name. That eventually grew to become the new experiences business. And so I got to really work very closely with Brian. It's really awesome. Learned a ton. One thing I learned is anything is possible. He used to say he wants ideas that scare him. So if you didn't come with the idea where he was like, shaking in his boots, you weren't being bold enough. That's what he would say. So that's what I really learned. But in terms of the projects, so first I joined working on business travel. It was building out that platform. It was basically, think of it as a B2B software for travel managers or travel agents at companies. And then when I shifted to Magical Trips, it was really awesome. We were basically building a brand new product from the ground up. You know, you had your normal Airbnb platform, you come and you book homes, but now we have to build a new guest experience, a new host experience, a new growth funnel, new engagement series for users trying out a new product. So I got to work on that from a front end, back end perspective, from a data perspective eventually as well, because we had to, how do you get new users trying out a new product? Okay, let's send emails to them, push notifications manually every day. Okay, how do you fetch that data? How do you query the database? How do you build tables every day so you can keep doing this repetitively? How do you track who received it, who didn't? So that's where all the data part came in.
Yeah, it's very exciting when you start building the data pipeline or table for a new product. So I'm always curious, so when you build the first table, you design the data pipeline, do you optimize for speed or you optimize for like quality, long-term usage?
So eventually, to a long answer, there were, by the time I was there were core tables for the users, for the bookings, for listings, but for the new models that were created, like experiences, trip reservations, things like that, they were well designed, but they evolved. There's tables with hundreds of columns and we're just constantly adding, and we always add new versions whenever we do DB exports like V2, V3, V4, V5. You know, we had a really great senior data engineer on our team who helped a ton with this. But to answer your question, no, you optimize for speed first, because tomorrow you might cancel this new product and be like, actually we got to do another thing. So we did that a lot. It was a lot of learning. It was a lot of trial and error. So it was truly like another startup. So we got to build things from the ground up and throw away a lot of things. So I tell everyone, I would recommend doing it for speed, just because you don't know if what you're building out is going to be around tomorrow or not.
Yeah, got it. And at what point, I think when a company become larger, the product become more mature, you have to optimize for quality. You do more rigorous code reviews. Do you remember at what point in time you have this shift?
There's a point in time where there's a shift, and there's a point in time where you are reminded to do it, to add more protection. So I'll say the protection parts and then the total shift.
Right.
So there's multiple times when, okay, this was later on after Magical Trips, when we built this internal tool to send out emails.
Yeah.
We knew we had a Sub-Zero incident when it made it to Twitter. So I laugh nowadays because on Twitter nowadays, you see like these test notifications and people like joke about testing production. That happened a lot, okay? And then, so whenever we saw a tweet on Twitter and they tag Brian, they always tag Brian, and Brian always responds to it. We get it. We saw how fun about it. We're like, oh, Sub-Zero, great. Now we got to write a postmortem. So that happened a couple of times, and we're like, you know what? No more. We backwrote a ton of tests.
Yeah.
You know, and we had good tests in place already, good observability, good monitoring and alerting. We operationalized all our services, but there's always more you can do. So that's how we built on. But the big shift was, it was, I think in 2017 or 18, from an entire engineering org perspective, from data engineering, data science, engineering, all of those functions, we added we always had a concept of tech quality, but it became a trait on your performance review as an engineer, DE, or anything like that. And you were leveled, or your performance review was based on that.
Right.
So we really instilled it. And this goes into like a lot of the practices engineers or software engineers or data scientists do. At the end of the day, if you're in a large org, it's driven by what you're incentivized to do. So now that there's tech quality, everyone was like, oh, great, tech quality can boost your performance or bring you down.
Yeah.
So we really, really got to do it. Because before then, it was ship.
Right. So what are some other interesting projects you worked on at Airbnb?
Yes. So there's this really awesome, interesting project that I ended up working on for almost 2 years. So it came from my time working on Magical Trips. So how we rolled out was we would roll out city by city because you have experiences in different cities. And you would, what the marketing, the growth team would do was send emails, send push notifications, do a lot of re-engagement. Our team was responsible for helping them do that. How do we do that? We wrote scripts. We eventually built tools to help us scale our sales. That's where we got to really know internal tools and low-code tools really well. We built it for ourselves. And what was interesting development was we found that other engineers around the company, other data scientists, other MLEs wanted to use the tools, the low-code tools we built. So initially, the low-code tool we built helped you build emails and landing pages and send push notifications without writing much code at all. You can use this user interface, put in who you want to target. You can say people who live in this country who haven't done this, who've done this. Then you can say, I want to display these images, this subject line. So that was a really interesting project. It's called Omni. Today it's still called Omni. And there was a bunch of us working on it. Myself and my co-founder right now at Mage, we started it at Airbnb. So that was a really awesome project. It grew really, really big. There's lots of great challenges we had, not just from a services perspective. At the peak, we were sending almost all the marketing emails and landing pages were powered through this tool. So we had some really, really awesome scaling challenges from both a service perspective, microservice perspective, but also from a data engineering perspective. We built a targeting service that would process all of the user attributes, targeting attributes, the segments, all of that ahead of time. And this is for hundreds of millions of users every day. And sometimes we would do it even sooner every day. And we took that, ingested it, put it into an index so that users who are setting up these campaigns would be able to target, this segment and this segment. So a lot of fun stuff there. I can go even deeper if you need, but that was a really awesome.
So when you were building those data tools, are you also working on the analytics? Are you the one who monitor the metrics? Are you the one who define the metrics?
Good question. Yes, we do. So it ranges. It really depends on the team. Some teams have embedded data scientists and data engineers to help with that, to set up the metrics. ERF is experimentation reporting framework. They'd help set that up. So DE would help set up these core tables that then would be consumed by, they would actually also build out the dashboards in Superset. But our team, fortunate for us, is we were there early on when Superset rolled out. We were there early on. We helped a lot on the existing data infrastructure, the tools like Airflow. So we were able to build out our core data tables and those metrics as well. So we had our own dashboards as well. We put them in Superset. We created our own metrics in ERF, and then we tracked a lot of this as well. And so we had operational metrics, uptime, number of dropped messages, render time, all that. But we also had more downstream metrics like number of opens, click-through rate, things like that.
Got it. And what was it like to collaborate with data scientists on those metrics? For example, is it common when you disagree on things or processes? How do you resolve those conflicts?
So we had a really great working relationship. We loved our data scientists. So if they said something was new to be something and they had a strong opinion, we're like, hey, yes, let's go with that. In terms of rarely just, we do disagree on priority at times, but we had a really good mutual respect. And for all the data scientists, there's amazing data scientists and they know what they're doing. So we really learned and leaned on them. But let's say there's a metric that we had to establish before the whole project ships, or let's say we wanted to create goals for our business unit or our organization that we're held against for every quarter. We would work together with product, with eng, with data science to really define what is that metric that we feel good about, that proves our value, but is also isn't like a vanity metric. So we would work together on that. But I can't recall a time where we had such a big disagreement that we were just on the total different end. If we had disagreements, it would be coming down to potentially the actual number or maybe slightly how we calculated or collected the data. But it was never directionally. We were quite aligned.
Yeah. The first day when I joined Amazon, I remember I had a little project from our senior manager. He wanted me to investigate why some metrics dropped. And I was really anxious about like, how am I going to investigate? And then I realized that's something as a data scientist you have to deal with kind of on the day-to-day basis. You have those ad hoc requests. So when some metrics that you build, there's a dip or there's a spike, how are you going to investigate that?
Yes. So if it's a spike in the right direction, we pause for a little bit and then we like, yes, just kidding. If it's a spike in the wrong direction, jump on that right away.
Right.
So if there is a spike, what we do is the tables we built, we built fact tables, especially for our metrics. Mm-hmm. So they're just snapshot. Here are the visits today. Here are the click-throughs today, and then we'll take a look at the Hive query that we wrote for that metric. We will then offline we will query that day. Mm-hmm. Then we will look at did our logic fit? Was our logic correct? We will try to regenerate that metric in a different way if possible to see if we can come to the same conclusion. And then if we can, then we'll go further upstream. Then we'll look at the tables that we depend on and then keep going and keep going. And sometimes it's probably a table upstream. Or in lucky use case, there's a spike because some PR news happened. But that's how we would do it. We take it one step at a time. We just keep going up the chain.
Yeah. So when those requests comes in, how do you feel about it? Do you feel, I have to look at this again? Or you're like, I'm so curious. Like, honestly, how do you feel about those requests?
So, I've always treated everything like it's your own. And that's the ownership mindset. Brian always said, you're an owner, treat like an owner.
Right.
So whenever someone came to me about those problems, I see it as they're alerting me where my pager duty didn't do it. Right. So,
right.
So I welcomed it. And yes, I would be sad that something broke, but I'm glad. I would rather them come to me than someone tweet about it and then Brian comes to me. So we jumped on that right away. We treated it really seriously because also, here's a funny story. Brian asked me for some data one time.
Yeah.
And I just gave it to him. I checked it a little bit.
Right.
And then I gave it to him because I was pretty comfortable already. And then he tweeted about it. And then I was like, oh no, I gotta go back. And I checked it again. I triple checked it, asked everybody that I knew, checked it. And good thing it was worked out because you never know how your data is gonna be used. So yes, if someone comes and says, hey, here's a spike, something's wrong, you jump on it before somebody else looks at your dashboard and be like, oh wow, we just tripled year over year. Let's go tweet about it.
That's a very interesting story. You never know how your data is going to be used. It's also for leaders. I don't know if anyone's listening to this. If you're asking for some data, it's helpful to let a data scientist know why you need this data. How are you going to use it? And then maybe, for example, if you weren't told this is going to be used in a tweet, maybe you can, hey, there's also some other interesting story I can show you, right? You know more about your data and your story. Yeah. So you also worked on machine learning engineering. Can you tell us what you do there?
Yes. When we were launched this platform Omni, we were sending tons of emails, building tons of landing pages, sending notifications, banners in search, all these things. So we had to come up with a way to better orchestrate all of these or better limit how many you saw. Can you imagine seeing a page with all these banners and internal ads or getting a bunch of emails talking about the same thing? So we had to build in some intelligent systems to better rate limit what you got, or in some cases, figure out which ones you should receive over the others. And so in terms of the tooling side, we had some great tooling. We had, this was when Zipline was around. It was our feature store. We had Big Head, the whole Big Head ecosystem. It was a machine learning platform for the data scientists there. So we used it, but on our team, we didn't have that many machine learning engineers or data scientists. So we took the liberty of putting a wrapper around it, adapting it to make it actually easier for us. So what we did for landing pages and emails for software engineers, we did that for a lot of the machine learning tools there. We made it really easy for someone to build a new model off of, make a prediction basically. A simple model, we use XGBoost, and then you can't customize the architecture, but we made it so that's a little configuration to choose what metric do you want to predict on. Is it binary? Is it multi-class classification? and then you can choose the tables that you want to include. We built out a lot of features. We use Zipline for that, and we leveraged a lot of the features other teams have used as well. And then we also added some new functionality in our feature store. We saw that because data scientists were really well versed in working in Hive, working in our Hive queries. So they were able to build out lots of features with varying windows. So you can choose, okay, let's calculate clicks over 7 days, clicks over 365 days. Also, not only clicks, not averages, medians, sums, right? So you have these operations and then you have these windows. We saw, hey, why don't we just do this awesome for loop that did all the operations across all the time frames? So you can have some, median, min for clicks over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days. It's an explosion of features, but hey, our infrastructure supported building that. So we made that really easy so that any developer who wants to build a model to make predictions wouldn't have to figure out, should I do these varying windows, these operations? It's all there. Just select all of them, and then we'll do this feature selection.
Yeah. So you build developer tools for data scientists and machine learning engineers.
Yes.
Did you have to learn some machine learning 101 when you started work on this tool?
Oh, absolutely. I started learning machine learning when I remember that Andrew Ng's class on Coursera.
Yeah.
Oh man, all that R, all that math. Yes. Had to learn that. And then what's really awesome, I think machine learning is a natural evolution for anyone working in data, because first you learn how to query data, right? Read the data. Then you learn how to write the data. Then you learn all these joins. You're really well versed in SQL. Then you get to a place where you want to start predicting on things. And then you understand logically, conceptually, the group bys, the aggregations, the row overs, the joins, the left joins, they're conceptually kind of difficult to understand until you do it often and do it a lot. And once you understand that, you start understanding how data is related, how models are related. And then you start getting into a place where you start answering questions with data. And I know analysis, data science does that, but that's also machine learning. Machine learning is just answering a prediction with data. And so, yes, I had to learn that. I had to then learn how an end-to-end machine learning pipeline works. There's like a million ways to think about how machine learning works, and there's a lot of resources out there, but there's a few that I learned that are really good that I recommend to a lot of people. And so I had to learn what an end-to-end machine learning pipeline looked like, because everyone does it differently. And then I had to learn all, different models, different libraries. Scikit-learn's amazing, so get started with that. And then feature engineering. There's like a little bit of an art and a science. So I had to learn that as well. And then I just got my hands dirty a lot and got to learn the inner workings of the current tools that we had and we didn't have. And that helped me build some abstractions around it and simplify it for others.
Right. And previously you mentioned the best way to learn is to do a project. And when you work on those tools while learning machine learning, did you collaborate with other machine learning engineers to help them with their project, or you build some pet projects on your own?
Yeah. So I wasn't good enough to help them, unfortunately. Sorry, but they were so nice to help me. So I would take real data and try to make a prediction on it. I think the first thing I did was a ranking, not a similar products model, and then ranking it on a product detail page.
Yeah.
And so I got a ton of help from a senior data scientist on the team, data engineer, and then machine learning engineer.
Yeah.
They helped me figure out like how to get the model up and running, how to pickle it, like where to stash it to serve it.
Yeah.
Also debugging my predictions as well, because at the time I wasn't sure if it was even doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So I got a ton of help from them, and I would say I would help them as much as I could, and in a way, I think I did eventually somehow, or even before that.
Right.
But they were very helpful on my journey.
Yeah, and data scientists and machine learning engineers, they're busy, and sometimes we all want to learn the skill set from our coworkers, but not everyone has the bandwidth to help. So how did you pitch them, or how did you convince them to help you on this?
Great question. So this goes into one of the career advices I share with everyone, and it is help as many people as you can without expectation of return.
Yeah.
So I went through my entire life and even my career at Airbnb and to now, I try to just give back and help people in any way possible, because you just never know. Maybe you'll never see them again, but that's fine. But you never know. 60 years later, you might need help, and then they're the only ones around that can help you, and they remember the impact you made on their lives. So those that were helping me throughout my time there, I can't thank them enough, and I hope that I was helpful to them in a past life or times before that, and I think I was.
Yeah. So you already have a relationship with them. You have already helped them probably with some data requests in the investigation, build some tools.
Yes.
Yeah. So it sounds like you worked on a wide range of projects as your official was software engineer.
Yes.
And you work on data engineering tools, machine learning tools, and you also build some machine learning models. And you mentioned performance review. Was it hard for you to write about your contribution in performance review?
It wasn't, because at Airbnb, one of our core virtues was be a serial entrepreneur. And when they say cereal, they spell it like the food cereal,
Right.
but it's also a homonym for the cereal, SERIAL. And why is because early on in Airbnb's life, the founders sold cereal to stay afloat.
Right.
And so we were encouraged to do things that went out of our role, out of our responsibilities. One of my mentors, Joe Bott, who's a VP early employee there, one of our investors, he says, don't let your role define your responsibility. So yes, your role may be software engineer, data analyst, data scientist, but is your responsibility only querying data, only building data models, only building out code? No, your responsibility as an owner is to find new opportunities, grow yourself, because that's one of the biggest ways you can add impacts to the company, and then find new opportunities. So I really took that to heart. And so, I built out I shipped all my features, and then I went on my way to figure out, how can I contribute more? How can I do more? Okay, let me go find opportunities. There's a treasure trove of data no one's looking at. Let's go look at that. Oh, wow, there's this area that we can do more in. There's this users are dropping off here. Let's build something for that. And so that allowed me to really go into try out other disciplines on the job. And that's why I share with others. You want to learn on the job? Kill it at what you do, and then no one's gonna tell you, oh no, stop learning that other thing. They're gonna be like, please do. And so working on these, that really helped.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I think especially as a data scientist, there's so many things you can do and you want to learn. Some data scientists are interested in product management, and you can collaborate with a product manager, outline a product roadmap, do some user interviews, and those things can help in your data science project as well. And if you want to learn more engineering skills, submit more code reviews and work with engineers, you don't have to let your job title define your career.
That's funny that you mentioned that. We had a few data scientists, and they're amazing. They started off data scientists, and then they really wanted to get into software engineering. And we loved working with our team, and we just really promoted learning and self-growth. And so they started committing code little by little by little.
Yeah.
And eventually they committed a lot of code. And it was awesome because they're empowered to do that because their teammates also support them, and you're committing code to the code base that I will be responsible for, but I trust you, you trust me. I review your code. I know that you're trying your best, and you're learning and you're growing.
Yeah.
So it was a really great mutual respect and working relationship in that aspect. And then now they do software engineering, but they have that data science background, which is a really killer combo.
Yeah. Sounds like you had a great time at Airbnb. And what made you want to leave the company and start your own company, started Mage?
Yes. It was a really hard decision. I could have been there for a very long time. I love the people there. I love the culture.
Yeah.
I love the work. It was just so empowering. But there came a time where I realized that there's this really big problem. There's this big need. And I love building things to empower others who don't normally have capability or opportunity to do something. And so I saw this huge opportunity for software developers to grow in their skill sets, to expand their capabilities of what they can build, and that being in the machine learning world, because I saw at Airbnb, we were using machine learning everywhere, and we had some really great tools for data engineers, machine learning engineers, data scientists to build models. But the software developers, I can count on one hand how many of them knew how to use the tools that we had for machine learning infrastructure tools. And so then I thought of, okay, hey, there's a way to simplify this, adapt this in a way so that software developer, someone who's technical but may not have a background in machine learning, can be able to build models, ship models, and apply them to their applications. So that's when I left in late 2020, started Mage, fundraise end of 2021. And then our initial product was this end-to-end machine learning platform. We hosted it on the cloud. You integrate all your data from different sources. We provide this UI, low-code UI to transform your data, because a lot of software engineers aren't familiar with the joins, the aggregations, all that. So we simplify that. And then you choose your use case. Hey, I want to predict churn. I want to predict this. I want to rank this. And behind the scenes, we do a lot of auto ML for you. We deploy that, we host it, and we do the feature serving for you as well. So that was our initial product, and we launched it. We went GA at the early 2022.
Yeah. Congrats on the launch.
Thank you.
So before you left, it was also 2020 and people were worried about recession. How did you know this idea will work?
I had a conviction that the history has shown us over time, very specialized skill sets with the augmentation of tooling becomes available to a wider audience. You look at security, developers are using Sneak. You look at DevOps, Heroku, Terraform, things like that. You look at building data models, dbt, things like that. So over time, these skill sets become what people like to say democratized. And so I saw this trend for machine learning as well. There's a huge appetite for it. Companies, even early stage companies, have a trove of data. There's so much that you can do. There's just not enough people to build these models, to build these features, to make predictions on it. And who's the next best group to empower? Either the non-technical folks and provide a no-code tool, or target the technical folks with a low-code tool. And so I felt like the next stage was targeting that group of developers.
And a lot of engineers, they want to build their own tools. So what are your thoughts on creating your own tools from scratch versus using something open source?
So it depends on the company you're at. If you're at a company where they incentivize you to be an amazing engineer, like build this really complex system, and you have to prove that you did something really, really hard. I've seen folks try to reinvent the wheel a lot. And one thing I shared with our CTO back at Airbnb was we need to take the trait called impact, how much impact value do you deliver, and divide it by the effort. If you built this amazing system and it took you 10 years, maybe that impact's not that much. But what if you deliver that impact and you used a bunch of open source, you're ingenious how it all connects together, and you spent a couple months doing it? How much more impact ratio do you have?
Yeah.
And so my advice is, do not reinvent the wheel, use as many things as possible, and only build new things if you have to. A lot of large companies with over-resourced, with a lot of engineering power, love to build things internally. And yes, there are times when they need to do it, but I've seen recently that they just want to build something and start from scratch.
Yeah. So what was the transition like from engineer to a CEO?
Yes. Well, I still love doing engineering. I love coding. I get so much energy from that. The transition was, for me, it's finding a balance. I just love putting on my headphones, getting into the zone, coding, but I cannot do that all the time.
Yeah.
I have to think about talking to users. I have to think about what are ways where we can grow the community. What meetups do we go to? How do we position ourselves? How do we talk about what we do? How do we prioritize different things? So there's a lot of other aspects that you have to be relatively good at, not great at, but good at. And you have to sometimes put off the thing that you really enjoy doing is coding. So that transition was all about finding balance. Now, I got a lot of practice at Airbnb because the last tool that we worked on, Omni, I played that role. After we built out a lot of the base functionality, I walked around with a slideshow. I went to every team and I pitched them.
Oh, wow.
And then I onboarded them and I helped them get set up. And then I was always the first line of defense whenever there was a bug or a complaint in our Slack channel. I'd always field it, help them debug it, and then pass it to the team or even build out that fix or that bug feature. So I got a lot of practice there. But definitely it's 100x that. It's already that amplified to 100 times now at Mage.
So basically, you're like a mini CEO of Omni.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you talk more about how to earn trust when you work with your internal customers when you build a new tool?
Yes. So to earn trust, you have to be really responsive to their needs. You have to empathize, because also here's the thing. One of the tricky parts was getting those teams to trust you. And this is not only just internal tools, but this is any tool. No one wants to be the canary, right? No one wants to be the first one to try something and have all the errors. So you really have to hold their hand. You have to make them know. I've always said this, make them feel that you only win if they win. That you're in it together. If they fail, you fail.
Yeah.
And then you're in it together. Where it's not just, you're just not another person on the board for them, right? Like, oh, who cares what happens? You got to make them feel that, you're there with them. You're in the trenches with them. So whenever we want to onboard someone, we would be there, help them set things up. When they launched, we would launch it with them. Our whole team would show up. We would respond to every Slack message instantly, right? So we're not putting them off. We would fix things immediately, just show them the urgency at all times. And that's how you build trust. And that's how people will bet on you. And they don't bet on your product, they bet on your team, because they know the product might have kinks that need to be fixed out, but they know the team, they trust the team, and that the team has their back, and that no matter what happens with the product, they know they'll be able to successfully launch whatever they need or use a tool to whatever capacity they need with the team's backing.
Yeah. That's a great point. And previously, you shared a few pieces of career advice with us. What are some other career advice you give people?
Yes. So the first one I would say is just kill it at what you do. Grow as much as you can in your skill set, whatever you were brought on to be. And let's say if you're a data science engineer, whatever it is, do it really well, and also augment your learning. You can only learn so much from your existing work, your existing role, before you expand into an area where you're unfamiliar with. And so how do you continue learning? You have to sometimes go outside. You have to learn from others. You have to collaborate on other projects, get your hands dirty in other things, expand your knowledge in your field. And that's where you start creating margin in the sense where you can deliver all your deliverables or expectations ahead of time. And that allows you to then start exploring in different areas. And that goes to the next area where I would say is provide value in unforeseen, unexpected ways. So you come in your work, you're supposed to do this. No one expected you to deliver value in these other areas. You found it yourself. And that's when you start building trust from others, from other stakeholders, from other people in the company. Wow, this person was able to ship all they had to do, and they found ways to improve the team, the product, the productivity, all of that. What else can they do? What else? So then any other project you take on, and people trust you for that. And another thing I would say is everyone eventually should become data literate, no matter what function you're in. This helps you find those opportunities. You query data, do some SQL 101, and then practice on your internal database. You can only practice SQL on some random toy data set on the internet so much. Leverage the treasure trove of data that you have at work for real user data, real traffic data. Learn how to query, figure out how join on 1 = 1 doesn't work, right? That'll make your query explode. You get that experience, and then you can start becoming data literate. That's where you find opportunities. And then after that, another thing I say is, and I shared it before, help as many people as you can without the expectation of returns. You'll be surprised how much impact you make on people's lives and how much eventually that all comes back around in some way or another.
Yeah, that's a great advice. So what was the piece of feedback you received at Airbnb that really changed your perspective?
Yes. So I shared one before where a mentor of mine, he said, don't let your role define your responsibilities. I explained that one already. Here's another one that same person gave, and he says, do things you're not qualified for. And so you come in doing something you're qualified for. But if you just keep doing that, meeting base expectations, that's all you'll do.
Yeah.
When you start doing things that no one ever expected of you, we talked about before, that's where you really start expanding your skill. You start flexing your own muscles, you start building new muscles, and then you start showing value that no one ever expected. And that's how you also build trust. So, if you think about things, a lot of people are the CEOs for the first time, right? A lot of people do XYZ. They build this giant service with 10,000 QPS for the first time. And so, they say, if you wait until you're ready, you'll be waiting for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's a great advice. A lot of people feels like, oh, I have to go through those online curriculum of all the machine learning and data science course so I can start my first data science project. No, you have to start doing it and learning and make a mistake. I think the cool thing about data science projects, there's no absolute answer to it. Everyone can build their own flavor of data science project based on your experiences, based on how you interpret a story, how you define the metric. So don't wait till you feel 100% qualified for. And I previously shared a story about how I got into Amazon. At that time, I didn't know A/B testing. I didn't know SQL. And if I only wait till I feel qualified for, I will never get my first job.
Yes, absolutely.
So I really like that advice. I think some people might misinterpret. Some people feels like, oh, does it mean I can do some very important tasks with the skills I haven't learned? It doesn't mean that. I think it means you can always start small, start your first project, and then learn gradually. And you don't have to just hold back because of the credentials. But of course, when it comes to some critical projects, you want to make sure you really understand the concept and not just yourself, rely on a system, someone to help you review your work, give you feedback, or certain tools that can check the model, check the data quality.
Yes, absolutely. Well said.
So previously, we talked a little bit about how you wear different hats in Airbnb, and how did you carve out your own path?
Yes. So in certain functions that you join, there's always these traits and there's always these personas that were modeled after people that have come before you. And typically you follow those at different levels and you go to that, you do that to the T, and then you get to the next level. But sometimes every now and then there are folks who have worked on different things, who are have different skill sets, different experiences, that they end up not fitting into one of those molds. And so that's when you have to start carving your own path. You might be a combination of skill sets your company has never seen as a data scientist, as an engineer. And it's your responsibility to advocate for that, to be a role model for others, because I guarantee you, there will be other people currently at your company or come after you that want to follow in your footsteps. And so you help carve that path. And it's quite difficult because you'll be up against people that are reviewing you and they've never seen someone like you before. But what really helps is being a type of influence, having an influence at the company, within your function, within other functions. And you know the easiest way to create that influence? Help as many people as you can without expecting return.
Yeah, that's a great point. I like how you draw the point back. Right, because a lot of people think, how do I create influence? Do I just go give a lot of presentations? Or I think it's not about the exposure you get. It's if you think about how many people will think about you when they have a question, right? If you become the hub, when people feel comfortable to ask for help, you're the most important asset on your team.
That's a good point. So when I joined early on, I really wanted to learn a lot, and I really wanted to get to know a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I studied. We had this API framework that we built internally. It was amazing. It is written in Ruby. It was awesome. There's a high learning curve, but it's very powerful. I took time out of my own personal life to study it, to really know how it works, the ins and outs. Then I joined the Slack channel of the team that built it, and I wasn't even on the team. I answered everything. I PR reviewed everybody, and everybody started knowing me as a guy that knows this API stuff. And that's how I met a lot of people early on. So that's an easy way to build influence as well.
Yeah. And through our conversation, I sense that you're a very passionate person, and especially when you talk about like writing code, all the technical side. And you didn't study computer science in college. How did you find this passion in coding in tech?
This is, we go through our lives trying to find our passion, our calling, and I'm very fortunate that I came across this. I was always into building things, Legos, computer games, all of that, but no formal training on JavaScript, HTML, programming languages. And so it was after school that I started dabbling in that. This was a time when flashing deals, flashing deals was the thing I started, was Living Social, Groupon, these flash deals websites were really popular. So I was a big user of Stick Deals, and I was thinking, hey, I can make something really awesome. And so I started designing it, and then I was trying to find someone to help me build it. I couldn't find anyone, so I said, okay, fine. I'll just build the HTML, and I just need someone to help me build the backend. Couldn't find anyone. Okay, I'll just try to build the backend. And so I took a real life need, something that I was excited about, a real use case, and then I iteratively built out the parts. And that's how I started understanding how coding works, how this all fits together. And then I found that I just love doing this. They say if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Right.
And so I just felt like I was playing games, just building this. It's like building up your WoW character, build up your website, see how many points you can get. So it was so fun, and I just loved it doing. I was doing it around the clock, and it was something that I couldn't go to sleep until I finished something, and I woke up with very little sleep because I needed to finish something. So that's when I knew this was my passion, and I love doing it.
Yeah. That's very exciting when I hear you talk about it. And when you just started coding, you probably faced a lot of challenges. And how did you learn to be a good engineer?
There's a lot of challenges. So do you know how to debug things better and how to fix errors better? The more errors you've come across, the better you fix them.
Right.
So after seeing tens of thousands of errors, I'm pretty good at fixing errors. And there's times when I still can't fix errors. But it comes back to the best way to learn and become better is by doing. And so what I did a lot, even before Airbnb, before my startup, I built a lot of apps and tools for myself, for my girlfriend, for my family, my girlfriend at the time, my wife now. I built a lot of these apps. I built something for her company as well. And so just do by doing. And then don't be afraid to talk about it as well, because you could build it and then no one uses it, no one knows about it. If a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? Get it in front of people, get people to actually use it, and that helps you refine your way of thinking about things, helps you challenge the way you build things. That's the best way to learn is just by doing and get feedback from others.
Yeah. And for data scientists or engineers who want to start a company, become a CEO, what's your best advice for them?
So it comes back to help as many people as you can without expecting anything in return, right? So first do that, because then doors will start opening up.
Yeah.
You might be talking to someone, or someone introduces someone that then talks about their life, and then you just have a spark like, oh my goodness, that's a big opportunity. Or someone might say, hey, you're an amazing person. Someone I know is trying to work on something. You two should connect, right? So just spend time with people, really help other people, and that will open doors for you. Another thing I would say is, if you're working somewhere right now, kill it at what you do and build that trust. And there's so many resources there to help you expand your skill sets, to meet new people, to just help you work on different parts. Maybe you want to go into advertising, work on the ads product, help someone in ads, or maybe you want to go into data infrastructure, go help some data engineer. If you want to work on BI tools, go help someone in a data analyst, right? There's so many opportunities to learn and see people's problems firsthand. People would pay so much money if you didn't work somewhere. If you wanted to do some research, you got to go give people Amazon gift cards to do research on them, right? You can do research on your fellow coworkers and at the same time actually help them out.
Yeah. And now when you hire data scientists or data engineers, what's the most important quality you're looking for?
Oh, yes. We have quite a few of them. But one of the most is we have two: victorious as a team and give people power-ups. Victorious as a team is we're selfless. As a leader, the number one quality we think in leaders is servant leaders. Serve those that you lead. So you put others before yourself. And one practical way we do this is if you have a team and you're working on a team project and you have your goals and someone else needs help on theirs, they're just really stuck and they only depend on you. Do you finish yours first and risk them not shipping theirs, or do you help them and then risk not shipping yours? The answer is do you help them first, because that has compounding effects. And then the second one that we have is give people power-ups. We see people for their potential. We're always doing things to encourage and build others up. And this doesn't mean you're always nice, like, oh, that's such a beautiful design. Oh, that's amazing code. No, it's seeing their unlimited potential. And from that view and that angle, you approach it differently. You say, you know what? I've seen your amazing work. I've seen your amazing code. I think this could be refactored way better. We've done good refactoring in the past. Or design. It's like, hey, I've seen your killer work. And this one, you're missing a lot of details that you used to have, right? So you see them for that. You're building them up. You're encouraging them. And so those are the top two. We have 6, but those are the top 2 that we have.
Yeah. Be a servant leader, put out other people in front of you. But also as a leader, you have to take care of yourself. So how do you manage stress while taking care of your team?
That's a very good question, because this is something I struggle with. Now, I know this fact to be true, okay?
Yeah.
Because you know when the airplane comes down, they say, put your mask on first. How can you put on other people's masks if you can't even breathe, right? So I know this, what you're saying is to be true, to be fact. But do I put it a lot into practice? And I have to be honest, this is something I can do better at.
Yeah.
I need to exercise more. I need to sleep more and things like that. And I know what an advice that someone gave me a while back at Airbnb was, if you're not your best self, remove yourself from the environment and situation, because your energy can either uplift others or drag people down, and you don't want to drag people down as well. And so, how do I take care of myself? Well, one of my great champion reminders that helps me is my wife. She reminds me: sleep, eat, drink water, do this, do that. So, and that helps me remind. And every time I listen to that, I come back stronger and better. But I do meditate. I do. I'm very spiritual, so I do all that. And that helps me reflect and be very introspective. And so I do see when I'm not being my best self, when I'm not being as optimistic as I am, or energetic, or not thinking too narrow-minded or short-term. So I do reflect on that a lot. And I think meditating helps a ton with that, and sleep as well.
Yeah, cool. And what are some design principles you follow?
Okay, one big design principle I always share is making things reusable. That sounds obvious, but it's harder. So when you build out, let's say, a React component, or let's say a table, or a function, for example, an app, whatever it is, a service could be a bunch of Python code. Do it in a way where you think further ahead. How can someone else use this for a similar use case? How can I configure this? Do I configure it through all keyword parameters? Do I configure it through a YAML file? But as you start thinking through that, you start really thinking at a high level, at a platform level. And so, we practiced this working on tools at Airbnb, and then we implemented this working on Mage and also our open source project. So that's one of the biggest design principles I love sharing with it. Make things reusable, modular.
So that's a general design principle you follow. And more specifically, what type of design principle you follow at Mage?
Yes. So we recently open sourced our data pipeline engine that we built to power thousands of pipelines, running models, building training sets for Mage. And we took a lot of our learnings working on data and Airflow at Airbnb. So Mage, for those that are unfamiliar, we recently released a modern replacement for Airflow. You can build data pipelines in Mage. We run it locally. You can deploy it to your cloud. It's really, really awesome. And it schedules all of this. So we have 4 core design principles that went into building this out. The first one was an easy developer experience. I haven't met one person who said they loved they enjoyed their developer experience in Airflow. So we really took that to heart. We provided a nice user interface. And for data scientists, it'll be familiar. It's a notebook interface. And in that interface, you can write your Python, your SQL, your R code, and you can execute it, and then you can see the results of it. So you can iteratively build out your data pipeline and then see the results and test it along the way. Another way for easy developer experience is it's a one-command startup. One Docker run command, bam, you're up and running. Really easy setup, no-brainer in a few seconds. And if you want, you can use our Terraform script to deploy to cloud and develop in the cloud. Another way for easy developer experience is we make it really easy for you to deploy on any of your cloud providers, GCP, Azure, and even AWS. So that's one of our big design principles. Another one is engineering best practices built in. When you work in a notebook, a normal Jupyter notebook, and you want to productionize it, which is a nightmare, it's this giant file, you have a bunch of JSON blobs, and how do you take out the parts where the scripts that you want to run from the visualizations, from the experimental code? It's quite difficult. So what we did was when you're building out your pipeline in Mage, every block, every step in your pipeline is an individual file. So it's that modularity aspect we just talked about.
Yeah.
And also in those files, you can reuse it in other pipelines. In addition, you can write data validation tests within. So every single time your pipeline runs and the block runs, we run your validations across that output of that data. And another way we have engineering best practices built in is observability. And we've learned this. Remember, I told you about sending those emails and notifications and it appears on Twitter. Well, we don't want that to happen to you for your data. So we made it really easy for you to, once you launch your pipeline in production, to be able to monitor how well it's doing or how bad it's doing. Alerts, get email alerts, Slack alerts. You can see the runtime, how long it took for each pipeline to run over time. You can see how your tests, how they failed or succeeded over time. You can track your data quality over time. So we made that really, really easy. A third one is scaling made simple. It's notoriously difficult to scale up Airflow, and we had a whole data engineering team dedicated to it. It's so difficult that there's companies out there that make a ton of money just hosting it for you. And we wanted it to make it empower small teams or even single developers to be able to manage thousands of pipelines. So we made it really easy we provided a nice interface for you to orchestrate and be able to see all your pipelines. We also integrate natively with Spark so that you can handle large data sets. And also if you write SQL, we'll execute your transformations and your SQL code in your data warehouse for you. And then finally, we treat data as a first-class citizen. There's tools like Airflow who are great at orchestrating generic workloads. You can use it for anything. We just wanted to focus only on data workloads, data pipelines, movement of data, integrating data, transforming data. And with that, we can do a few things natively. We can build in native functionality for versioning, partitioning, backfilling. And every step in your pipeline actually produces a data product. So let's say you're building a pipeline to load data, transform it. Every step creates a snapshot at the time that you ran it. So you can come back and recall it. You can catalog it, come back if you need to use it to debug a metric or to replace a table. You can also see the status of it as it's building out as well.
Yeah, that sounds very exciting. And based on my personal experience, data scientists want flexibility. So although this tool has a lot of functionality, what if I only want to use a few or I want to customize a feature? Am I able to do that?
Yes. So part of the modular design principle that we carry on, when you build out a pipeline, all you're doing is you're chaining Python files, SQL files together. We don't tie you into the system. So let's say you wanted, for some reason, you wanted to take your Python code and then run it somewhere else. You're not tied to it. You don't have all these functions like DAG and add task. And you're not tied to that. You can go and bring that somewhere else. So we make it really easy for you to use somewhere else. Now, if you want to add code, you're literally just writing your code in there. So the framework will chain it together and pass your data around, but the actual logic in it is something that you write as well. And contributing is really easy. We make it really easy to add new UI components if you want to edit the user interface. We use React, we use TypeScript, we use Next.js. So it's really easy if data scientists want to delve into front-end engineering. We have someone actually doing that right now. It's pretty cool. And then the back-end code is all in Python as well. So something a lot of data scientists are familiar with. We have lots of documentation to contribute and expand on the current capabilities. And we're always adding new capabilities, and we love people's feedback. So whenever someone asks for something and a few folks ask for it, we jump on it right away.
So what do you think about the future of ML ops and especially ML ops tools?
Yes. So this reminds me, when Airflow came out early on in 2014, and then it grew to do a bunch of things. And then there was a time, maybe a couple of years ago, where there's this wave of what they say, unbundling, right? And this isn't just Airflow. This is other tools that did a lot of things. You unbundle them. And then it becomes an individual tool that's this one thing. There's this saying where, you remember Craigslist, where you can go on it and buy anything? There's a saying where you take one page out of Craigslist and that becomes a business. Similarly, you take one feature out of this giant monolithic tool and you have another tool, a data tool or ML tool. And I think we're in a place where unbundling has gone to the extreme. There's something that should be three things in one, right? There's 100 different tools that this unbundling did. Maybe these three should be together. Maybe these five should be together. So I think there's another wave of that happening where people don't want 100 tools. They're okay with 50 tools and each doing two things, or maybe 30 tools that each do three things. And this is very relevant in ML ops. This is really relevant in data. For example, in ML ops, do you want to only provide a model serving service? I'm not sure, because if you do that, how are they going to do the feature serving? So are they going to have to use another tool to do the feature serving? Or are they going to have to build it their own? What good is serving a model if you can't serve the features with it, with low latency? Maybe those two need to be bundled together. Similarly, for data, do you want a data pipeline that does only transformations and doesn't be able to ingest data from other places? Like, completely separate the E and the L and the T? I don't know. Maybe bundle it up together, because there's a lot of synergy between the two. So I think with the whole unbundling, there's going to be the areas that people realize there's synergy between, and then rebundle that. Now, I'm not saying bundle the whole 100, but rebundle a few of those.
Yeah. And what do you think about your future career? Obviously, you're busy building Mage.
Yes. My future career, I continue love building things. So I never want to forget how to build it, right?
Yeah.
It's my passion. I love building, but I also love helping people. I love being in front of people and helping them have a more enjoyable work experience. So I love really getting in front of people. So, my role recently is more akin to like a DevRel role. So I really love that. I love customer support as well. I think that was one of the things. I did that for a short time back in my past. So I really love helping people in that aspect. So, combining those two together, customer support engineer at Mage.
Yeah, that's great, because a lot of great engineers actually don't enjoy the customer support part. They just want to build this cool thing and put their head down. Yeah, so I think that's a great quality to get feedback from users, especially your side job is CEO on the side of customer support engineer.
Yes.
So what do you like to do when you're not working?
Yes. So when I'm not working, one of the things I love doing is watching shows and movies. And why I like that is there's only a few things that completely take my mind off this world of what we're doing. And that is watching a show or a movie. It really helps me transport my mind and body somewhere else. And I really feel like I'm part of that. And I actually don't think of anything else. And then when that's done, then I'm back to, and it's not that I'm trying to escape reality.
Right.
Okay? I love my reality. My reality is like 99% of it, but it's a really exhilarating feeling to be in multiple places at different times, not at the same time, but in different times. So that really helps me unwind and relax. But also, I use the lessons from these stories, and it helps me actually expand my mind. Oh, there's this funny story. Okay, so there's this show called Altered Carbon. For those that haven't seen it, it's on Netflix. It's based off a book, really futuristic. Basically, the universe now allows you to. You have a chip in your spine, and it tracks all of your data. So if you have an accident and you need to be revived, they just take that chip and put it in another what they call a sleeve, like a body of yours, and that allows you to theoretically live forever. I was talking to someone at Airbnb who's really high up, and I was telling them, hey, have you seen this movie? And they say, oh, show. They go, no, and then I explain it to them. And this person is really high up, okay, well to do. So So I was explaining, oh yeah, you can stick this chip in and you can live forever.
Yeah.
And they looked at me and they opened their eyes and like, tell me more. and I really felt like they were contemplating building this or funding something
Wow.
to do this, right? So, a lot of people, even visionaries, they or luminaries, they get inspiration from stories, from books, because I would say these stories in books, they're not bound by logic. They're not bound by enough resources. They can literally just make up anything.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's great, because then we look at them like, oh, that's possible. There's this story where there's this runner back in, I forgot, 19 something. They thought, oh, running this mile, I forget what 4-minute mile, something like that, wasn't a 6-minute mile. I forget.
Yeah.
It wasn't possible. After they did it, shortly after, a bunch of other people do it. And one of the big things in life is seeing someone do something you thought was impossible. Then you realize, I'm not so different from that person. I can do that too. So that's why these stories are really awesome. And also being around other great people, it comes back to help people. You help people, who knows who you'll be introduced to or who you'll know, and you'll be able to see, oh, you know what? That person's really successful, or that person's really great at what they do. I'm not that different from them. I can do that.
Yeah. And speaking of people who help you see a higher limit, who is someone that inspired you?
Brian and Joe Bott. So Joe Bott is an early employee at Airbnb, VP. It was VP there as well. I remember Brian always says ideas that scare me, and he'd always push us to be bolder, and he would always come up with these wild plans, and they eventually just come true, right?
Yeah.
And it's like willing things into existence. And I actually learned this from somebody. Vision. We're used to vision. When people say, "What's your vision?" Oh, vision this, vision that. And people think it's what you see, but I can't see that far. I can't see more than a mile, right?
Yeah.
You can't see over the horizon, but vision is actually speaking things into reality. If you talk about something as if it was true, as if it was coming, people can start seeing it. You start seeing it more, and then everybody just starts seeing it, believing it, hearing it, feeling it, repeating it. Then it just eventually happens, right? So you need to speak your future, speak your vision into reality before you can even see it. So I learned a lot of this from just seeing what Brian does, what Joe Bott does, the things they think about, the things they believe so much in other people as well. And this comes from seeing others for their potential, right? For who they can be. And they saw this in everybody on their team, everybody that was that they worked with. So I learned a lot from them. I learned to just think bold and just push the boundaries, and anything is really possible.
Yeah, that's a very powerful message. So before we wrap up, if people want to keep following your journey, learn from you, or learn more about Mage, where can they find you online?
Yes, you can find me online. I'm not hidden at all. I will jump on a Zoom call to chat with you. I love chatting with you all, and I love with anybody early in their career, late in their career, because I'm just so passionate about this. So go to mage.ai/chat. That just joins our Slack, and we're on there 24/7. I'd love to chat with you on there. I can't give you my Calendly on here because it's long to spell out.
Yeah, I can link it to the notes.
But I can share with you there in Slack as well. We can hop on a call. I'm not that hard to reach. I don't know if I can give you my number, but let's chat on Slack, and then maybe I'll give you a number. We can meet up in person or digitally,
Right.
but I would love to connect with all of you.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And also, I like your Twitter handle, Tommy Dangerous.
Yes. I've actually had people ask me, "Is that really your last name?" And I'm thinking, how many dangerous people do you know, right? For those that don't know, my last name is Tommy Dang, D-A-N-G, and so in college, I just thought, hey, let's add dangerous at it, and it just stuck. So that's my last name now. Not officially, but
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming to the show, and I really enjoyed the conversation.
thank you.
It's very
Thank you for having me.
inspiring.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved it.